Our whole family had been eagerly planning a much-needed vacation to reconnect and create cherished memories. Then, unexpectedly, Bianca, my husband's dear childhood friend, found out about our plans and fervently begged to join us, sparking a whirlwind of emotions and turning our carefully laid-out getaway into something none of us could have anticipated. Without hesitation, Leonardo canceled my plane ticket and gave it to her, leaving me to travel in a hard seat on a 36-hour train ride. I glanced at my in-laws and, to my shock, they all backed my husband's decision, so I reluctantly went along with the plan. I grabbed my train ticket and headed west, ending up away for 3 months, a rarity for my husband's extended breaks that set off a family panic. That's when we decided to take a long trip together. I started planning everything 6 months ahead, choosing destinations, mapping out an itinerary, and booking every detail. Since the family wasn't involved, I ended up handling flights, hotels, meals, and all the activities. I didn't mind the extra work as long as everyone was happy. Flights were tough to book, so I secured tickets for the whole family early on. When my sister-in-law mentioned she'd never flown first class, I even paid extra to upgrade everyone's tickets. Just before we were set to leave, my husband suddenly informed me that Bianca had learned about the trip and wanted to join us. Our flight is full, so you'll have to take the train. I've already bought your ticket, he said, sending the electronic ticket via WhatsApp. What does this mean? I asked. This is a family trip, and if Bianca wants to come, I have to bring her. She's practically family, Leonardo replied. I was furious. When my sister asked to join, you made it clear that no outsiders were allowed. Now that Bianca wants to come, you agree immediately? Bianca and your sister aren't the same. We're closer. She's practically family. I scoffed in disbelief. I bought the plane tickets ages ago. Why must I take the train? There were no seats left on the flight, so I had to cancel my ticket and book one for Bianca. Leonardo simply shrugged. The only option for you is the train. I checked the electronic ticket he sent. It was for a 36-hour hard seat. So you bought Bianca a first-class plane ticket while I'm stuck on a 36-hour train ride? I asked incredulously. He smirked. Didn't you say you love watching the scenery from the train? Now you can see it all. I looked toward my in-laws. My father-in-law quickly averted his gaze while my mother-in-law tried to comfort me. Camilla, Bianca, and Leonardo have been friends since childhood. They have plenty to talk about. Just bear with it for now, and we'll meet up once you arrive, she said. My sister-in-law, Julia, added, Sis, Bianca has a delicate constitution. There's no way she could handle a 36-hour train ride. You're strong and healthy, you can manage. I laughed bitterly, wondering who really belonged. It was starting to seem like Bianca was your true daughter-in-law. Leonardo frowned. It's just a train ride, it's not a big deal, and Bianca is practically family to us. It's only fair to keep her comfortable. Can you be a bit more gracious and set a good example? At that moment, the doorbell rang. My sister-in-law rushed to open it. It was Bianca. Bianca, you're here. I've been waiting for you, Julia exclaimed as she dragged Bianca's 2 large suitcases inside. Oh, Bianca, I missed you so much. If you hadn't gone abroad, you could have married my brother and we'd all be family, she gushed, hugging Bianca. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law held Bianca's hand and said, I always knew you and Leonardo were perfect for each other. In my heart, I've always seen you as my daughter-in-law. No one else compares to you. They said this openly, with not a hint of shame, and in that moment my heart turned cold toward this family. Even though Bianca and Leonardo were childhood sweethearts, when his family fell on hard times, she left without a second thought. I was the one who helped the Allera family repay a $500,000 debt, and out of gratitude, Leonardo married me. I'd given so much to this family, caring for my in-laws when they weren't well and looking after Julia since she was 10 by handling everything from cooking and laundry to school pickups, homework, and parent-teacher meetings. Now, at 15, Julia had effectively been under my care for 5 years. Though I was only her sister-in-law, I felt more like a mother. I also generously supported my in-laws, providing them with a monthly allowance of $10,000 and taking care of all household chores and meals, practically spoon-feeding them, so that I wouldn't just be seen as a daughter-in-law. I often felt more like a live-in maid who paid out of pocket to care for this family, never expecting anything in return. Yet, despite all I'd done, they still treated me like an outsider. Bianca walked up to me with a bright smile. Sorry, Camilla, if I hadn't suddenly decided to join, you wouldn't have missed the plane ticket and been stuck with a train seat. I thought about skipping the trip since there were no tickets, but Leonardo said he'd handle it. I didn't expect he'd force you to take the train. I even offered to go myself, but he worried about you being alone for so long. So, I guess I have to thank you for taking the inconvenience. Julia looped her arm around Bianca affectionately. Exactly, trains can be risky, and if someone targeted a girl like you, what would we do? Meanwhile, Camilla has that fierce, warrior look. She'd scare off any creeps in no time. They both burst into laughter. Seeing my anger, Leonardo softened his tone. All right, I know this arrangement isn't ideal for you, but it's the best solution we have. Remember last week when you were eyeing that bag you wanted? Why not go ahead and buy it? I extended my hand. Sure. $5,000 is steep. I already agreed you could have it, but now you expect me to pay too? Don't push it, he snapped. I smirked and replied sarcastically, since when do I need your permission to spend my own money? How much do you even earn in a month? At that, his face flushed with embarrassment. That's not fair. His monthly salary was only $3,000, while I earned $100,000. His income didn't even cover his own expenses. I'd been supporting this household from the start. When we got married, he gave me no dowry. I paid off a $50,000 debt, added a $30,000 wedding gift, and even bought him a house. This comfortable life we now enjoy is all thanks to me. If they loved Bianca that much, they could have welcomed her as their daughter-in-law. Camilla, hurry up and make dinner. It's late and everyone's hungry, my mother-in-law urged. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned to Bianca with a smile. You and Leonardo grew up together, so I assume you ate here all the time. Of course, Bianca chimed in. Back then, Leonardo and I practically shared every meal. Bianca laughed. After all these years abroad, you must really miss Mom's cooking, right? I glanced at my mother-in-law and added, Mom, shouldn't you start dinner for Bianca? With that, I sank into the couch and flipped on the TV. Soon, Leonardo strode over, clearly annoyed. How could you make Mom cook? You know her health isn't great. Get up and make dinner. Surprise, I replied, Mom, you're unwell. Is it serious? Why didn't you tell me? My mother-in-law snapped, who's unwell? I'm fine. Stop trying to insult me. I asked playfully, then why don't you want to cook for Bianca? Instantly, her expression soured. Who said I wouldn't cook? She disappeared into the kitchen and spent the next 2 hours preparing dinner. When it was ready, Julia pulled Bianca close to me. Sis, Bianca's our guest. Would you mind giving up your spot? My mother-in-law interjected, handing me a bowl. If sitting on the edge makes you uncomfortable, why not take your plate to the kitchen, eat there, and even help clean up a bit? Now I wasn't even allowed at the table. No need, I've got a friend who invited me out, so I'll eat with them, I said flatly. Leonardo's irritation grew. We're leaving for our trip tomorrow, and you're still going out. Did you even pack yet? Don't you have hands? Why don't you pack? I retorted. Stunned by my response, he fell silent. I left, treating myself to a lavish dinner at a high-end restaurant. Steak, wine, and lobster, all paid with my own money. I stayed out well past midnight, enjoying myself. When I returned, the house was dark, and no one had bothered to call or text. Apparently, they had all gone to bed without a thought. Fumbling in the dark, I reached the bedroom and sat on the bed, only to be startled by a piercing scream. I quickly switched on the light and saw Bianca lying where I usually sleep. The sight made my blood boil. Without thinking, I slapped her across the face. Bianca burst into tears, and Leonardo sat up quickly, shielding her. Why did you hit Bianca? He demanded. We were just talking and must have fallen asleep accidentally, I replied. Oh, really? So you just accidentally ended up in bed together, holding each other? I snapped, anger rising. Leonardo retorted, we were waiting for you. You were out so late that Bianca stayed to keep me company. We talked for a while and then fell asleep. That's perfectly normal? I huffed. Then why didn't you call or text? You were too busy chatting with your best friend, and you two ended up in the bedroom instead of waiting in the living room. Leonardo scowled. You're being unreasonable, Camilla. Fed up, I turned to Bianca. I'm back now, so why don't you leave? Do you expect all three of us to share one bed? Ignoring my words, Bianca clutched her face and whimpered, Leonardo, it really hurts. Leonardo's concern was evident as he replied, I'll get you some medicine. After they left, I immediately shut and locked the bedroom door, changed all the sheets and covers, put in my earbuds, and went to sleep. The next morning, Leonardo stormed up to me, furious. What was that about last night? I knocked for ages, yet you didn't open the door. Mom and Dad were woken up by it. Did you do that on purpose? He sneered. I deadpanned, yes, I did it on purpose. I thought I'd give you a chance to sleep with Bianca. You should be thanking me. Leonardo countered, exasperated. Are you nuts, Camilla? Why would I sleep with Bianca after that morning? Something inside me shattered completely, a mix of humiliation, exhaustion, and an unfamiliar clarity. I spent the entire day pretending everything was fine while helping with the final preparations for our trip. Every word and gesture from them only pushed me closer to an inevitable decision. At dinner, I sat silently, watching the family dynamics. Bianca laughed loudly while holding Julia's hand, making over-the-top comments about the trip. My father-in-law barely glanced my way, too absorbed in his phone, and my mother-in-law deliberately ignored me, treating Bianca as if she were the host. Leonardo, as usual, acted like nothing was wrong, as if everything were perfectly normal. I knew that if I spoke up, they'd accuse me of causing a scene or not understanding their bond, so I stayed silent while my disdain festered. After dinner, while everyone laughed in the living room, I went upstairs and began packing not for the trip, but for myself. I gathered important documents, credit cards, and valuable items, discreetly tucking them into a small suitcase. I left most of my clothes behind, as my departure had to be swift and silent. Before heading downstairs, I removed my wedding ring and placed it on the dresser. I stared at it for a moment, feeling nothing. It meant nothing to me anymore. Calmly, I descended the stairs. In the living room, Leonardo sprawled on the couch with Bianca laughing beside him, while Julia snapped selfies with her. My mother-in-law was busy serving tea, oblivious to everything. No one noticed when I grabbed my bag and left through the front door without a backward glance. I hailed a cab and headed straight to a hotel. I refused to go back to my parents' house, where I'd likely face judgment or pressure to save my marriage. That night, I began planning my next steps. I called the bank, froze all our joint accounts, and canceled credit cards in Leonardo's name. I also messaged my lawyer, instructing him to start divorce proceedings immediately. The next morning, I went to the bank in person to transfer money from our joint accounts into my personal account. Leonardo had no savings of his own. His meager $3,000 monthly salary barely covered his expenses without my support. I knew he wouldn't be able to maintain the comfortable life he'd grown accustomed to. Later that afternoon, Leonardo started texting and calling me. "Where are you? Did you forget your passport? Why aren't you answering?" I saw his messages but didn't respond. That evening, Bianca called me from her number. I ignored the call, but she left a voicemail. "Camilla, this is getting serious. Leonardo is really worried. You should have handled this more maturely. I don't know what you think you're doing, but it isn't helping anyone. If you need help, I can talk to you." I laughed bitterly in my hotel room. Bianca honestly believed she had the moral high ground to lecture me on maturity. I blocked her number immediately the next day. I returned to the house I had purchased with my own money and immediately instructed my lawyer to start the process of removing Leonardo from the property. I wasn't about to let him continue living off me while treating me like dirt. After all, he had contributed nothing financially. My lawyer reassured me that the house was legally mine, and soon after, I left town. I also stopped by my parents' place to make it crystal clear that I didn't want any interference or attempts at reconciliation. I briefly explained what had happened and told them I needed time for myself. They were shocked, but they understood. Eventually, Leonardo managed to contact me using his father's phone. "Camilla, what do you think you're doing? You can't just disappear like this and leave us all worried." "What kind of wife does that?" he demanded. I laughed coldly and fired back. What kind of husband gives his wife's plane ticket to his mistress, disguised as a childhood friend, no less? "Leonardo, you should be grateful that I put up with this for as long as I did. Now enjoy your new life. I hope Bianca can support you, because I'm done." He pleaded. "You can't do this to me, Camilla. It's not fair. Think about Julia. Think about my parents. You can't just abandon us." I ended the call before he could say another word, feeling a mix of relief and anger. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. In the following days, Leonardo and Bianca tried different tactics to reverse the situation. First, he attempted to reconcile, claiming I was overreacting, and then Bianca tried to play peacemaker, insisting she hadn't known how much her presence would upset me. But I was already gone. I left the city for several months, focusing on myself, revisiting personal projects I'd put on hold, and rebuilding my life away from all that toxicity. When I eventually returned, everything had changed drastically. Desperate, Leonardo filed a claim to try to get a share of my assets, arguing he was entitled to the house. I wasn't surprised. He'd always been quick to exploit any loophole, having never been capable of supporting himself, let alone someone like Bianca, who lived in a fantasy world funded by others. What he hadn't counted on was my preparation. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my lawyer, head held high. Leonardo was there, flanked by Bianca, who looked eager to demonstrate how much she supported him. Their confidence evaporated quickly when my lawyer presented evidence showing that I had paid for everything: the house, the family's $500,000 debt, and all the household expenses. He also laid out bank statements proving that Leonardo had spent over 80% of our joint funds on frivolous gifts for Bianca, complete with receipts. As the case unfolded, it became clear that Leonardo had no right to any of my assets. He hadn't contributed anything, financially or emotionally, throughout our marriage, and even the judge seemed annoyed by his audacity. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood and looked directly at Leonardo. For years, I was your wife, your partner, and the sole reason your family recovered from financial ruin. I paid off your debts, supported your home, cared for your parents, and practically raised your sister. And how did you repay me? By giving away my plane ticket to your so-called childhood friend, letting her take my place in every way, while I was treated like an unpaid servant. And now you have the nerve to try to take what's mine, the house I bought with my own money. Leonardo tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced him with a reminder that he would have his turn to speak. I continued, turning to Bianca. And you, Bianca, act like you're special, like you're above everyone else, but deep down, you're nothing more than someone who leeches off others. You left the country when my family was in crisis and only returned once our comfortable life was restored, all thanks to me. And now you expect to walk away with something? Let me be clear, you two deserve each other, because you're both shallow, selfish, and have nothing of substance to offer. Bianca's face turned red, and she nervously glanced around the courtroom while Leonardo avoided meeting my eyes. After hearing everything, the judge not only denied Leonardo's claim, but also ordered him to pay court costs and a fine for filing a baseless lawsuit. When the verdict was read, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. They had tried to take everything from me, but I walked out with my dignity intact and my life in shambles for them. In the courthouse hallway, Leonardo approached me. Camilla, wait, can we talk? I looked at him and couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Talk? Now you want to talk after everything? No, Leonardo. I think I've heard enough. Enjoy your new life with Bianca. I hope she's ready to support you because I'm done. I left the courthouse without looking back, leaving nothing left to say or hear. In the months that followed, I heard that Leonardo's life fell apart without my financial support. He lost his car and was evicted from the house he was living in. Bianca, of course, disappeared as quickly as she had reappeared in his life, leaving him to face the consequences of his choices alone. I even heard that he had moved back in with his struggling parents. Meanwhile, my life moved on. I invested in myself, advanced in my career, and even bought a new home, bigger and more beautiful than the last one. I realized that the freedom of not carrying the weight of ungrateful people was the greatest wealth of all. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and finally allowed myself to live without fear of manipulation or exploitation. One day, while walking through the city center, I saw Leonardo sitting on a park bench, looking tired and defeated. He noticed me, but before he could say anything, I simply turned and walked away. He was now just a ghost of my past, and I had no interest in resurrecting him. At last, I was free from their manipulations, their ingratitude, and the burden of supporting a family that had never truly valued me. For the first time in years, my life felt like it was finally my own. Months passed since the court ruling, and I continued to focus on myself and the life I had been rebuilding. Every day felt like a fresh start. My career was thriving, I had begun traveling more, and I found joy in simple things like reading, painting, and spending time with friends who truly cared about me. I no longer felt burdened by the weight of someone else's failures. One evening, while I was enjoying a quiet dinner at my new home, I received an unexpected call from my lawyer. He explained that there had been some new developments with Leonardo. He had attempted to file a separate suit, trying to reclaim some property that he argued was rightfully his, specifically, some luxury items and funds that he claimed had been part of our marriage. Apparently, he was in deeper financial trouble than I had realized, and he was desperate. At first, I felt a mix of emotions, disbelief, annoyance, and even a little pity for him. He had burned every bridge with me, and yet he still couldn't let go of the past. But instead of letting his actions affect me, I decided that I was done with him completely. I was never going to be dragged back into that toxic spiral. I instructed my lawyer to handle the matter swiftly. This was the last time I would ever need to deal with him. We filed the necessary paperwork to put an end to the dispute, and within weeks, the case was dismissed. Leonardo's claims were once again deemed frivolous, and he was ordered to pay additional legal fees. But that wasn't the end of the story. About a month later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Leonardo. The letter was simple and straight to the point, no excuses, no manipulative language. He apologized. He admitted to his mistakes, acknowledged the hurt he had caused me, and confessed that he was lost without me. He wrote that he understood now what he had thrown away and how selfishly he had acted. It was one of the most genuine apologies I had ever received from him. I stared at the letter for a long time, contemplating what to do. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. After all, I had been right all along and everything had unfolded just as I had expected. But there was also a small part of me that could still recall the good moments in our marriage, the dreams we once shared, the love I had tried so hard to hold on to. That part of me wanted to believe that people could change. But in the end, I realized that forgiveness didn't mean reopening the door to the past. It meant letting go, truly letting go. I didn't need him in my life anymore, not as a partner, not even as a memory. I had healed, and I was whole again. I wrote a brief reply to his letter, thanking him for the apology and wishing him the best. I told him that I had moved on and that it was time for both of us to walk different paths. I wished him well, but I made it clear that there was no future for us together. Once I sent the letter, I felt a sense of peace. The chapter with Leonardo was finally closed. A few months later, I received a phone call from Julia, who had been trying to reconnect with me ever since the split. She had been a distant observer during all the drama, but had reached out after everything settled. I had missed her friendship, despite the tension with her brother, and we met for coffee. During our conversation, she told me that she was planning to move abroad, pursuing a career she had always wanted but had put on hold because of family obligations. "Camilla," she said, looking at me with a smile that felt genuine, "I've seen what you've gone through, and I have to say, you're the strongest person I know. You didn't just leave. You rebuilt yourself. I think that's something we all need to learn from." Her words warmed me. They meant more than she probably realized. I was finally ready to forgive her, too, for her silence and complicity in all that had happened. She wasn't perfect, but she wasn't the enemy. It felt good to let go of that lingering resentment. With each passing day, I moved forward, embracing the life I had created for myself. I began to dream again, not about the life I had with Leonardo, but about the future I could make on my own terms. There were no more expectations, no more obligations. Just endless possibilities. The real resolution wasn't just winning the legal battle, it was freeing myself from the chains of a past that had held me hostage for so long. I was no longer defined by my relationship with Leonardo or anyone else. I was simply Camilla, and that was enough. As the years passed, I continued to thrive. I opened a nonprofit that supported women going through difficult divorces and financial independence struggles, something that had become my passion. I also found love again, but this time, it was different. It wasn't based on need or obligation. It was a partnership of mutual respect, trust, and support. One day, while walking through the city, I saw Leonardo again. This time, he was with a woman I didn't recognize. He didn't notice me, and I didn't care to make myself known. He was a shadow from my past, and I had moved on completely. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. In that moment, I knew that I had finally won, not just in court, but in life. I had found freedom. And nothing, not even the ghost of Leonardo, could take that away from me. The end.